You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights for today, Friday, the 20th of January. The Marxist BBC has just released a news report on immigrants that live in Britain. A sovereign wealth fund from China has invested a stake in Thames Water Utilities. The newspaper The Telegraph is now reporting that the Labour Party, when it was in power, didn't care who landed in Britain. Euronews with Nick Griffin. Israel is to kick out 2,000 immigrants that came to work there from Africa's Ivory Coast. A United States helicopter has crashed in Afghanistan. And thought for the day. UK news. The Marxist BBC has just released a news report on immigrants that live in Britain. The immigrant-loving BBC has reported that 370,000 of the immigrants have claimed back work-related benefits from the British taxpayers. They say most of them came to work in Britain, came as students or were just visiting. This week has seen spiralling unemployment figures and the rise of redundancies across the UK. A sovereign wealth fund from China has invested a stake in Thames Water Utilities. The company, called CIC, has bought an 8.68% share of our capital's water system. The Telegraph is now reporting that the Labour Party, when it was in power, didn't care who landed in Britain. The anti-British Telegraph newspaper is far too late in helping to stop the ethnic genocide in this country. One source has commented about the Telegraph. They are backstabbers, traitors and turncoats. Even one High Court judge has condemned the ridiculous system of loopholes and calling it an immigration merry-go-round. Euronews. Nick Griffin has sent us this week's dispatch from the belly of the beast from the European Parliament in Strasbourg. "I've been burning the midnight oil," he tells us, polishing the translation and doing final editing on a book on Islam by one of our European nationalist friends. The original is excellent in its own right and it's already been translated very accurately, but there's a big difference between technically accurate foreigners' English and real English. As I've also been given free rein to propose additions, and as a study of this wicked, vicious faith is a speciality of mine, it's turned out to be a much more bigger job than I thought it would be when I offered to do it. Still, I've never really believed in the old serviceman's advice, never volunteer for anything. It's a mentally stimulating job and one that's well worth doing. More on this once the book, which pulls no punches and is likely to be pretty controversial, is published. It's been a while since the party has had a big push on this subject, and our publicity department is working some fresh campaign material to link our already very popular leaflet on the closely related issue of halal ritual slaughter. Mr Griffin also gives us some inside insight into the latest example of the European Parliament's democratic deficit. This week the Euro circus was even more Kafkaesque than usual, he says. A hunting pack of left liberal hyenas dominated the chamber during a brutal roughing up of Hungary's semi-nationalist Fidesz government. The Hungarians are in trouble because they are trying to return some measure of democratic oversight for the elected government over the banking system, as well as carrying out some tinkering but still overdue reforms to both media law and the legal system. The sight of a democratically elected government taking steps to restore a measure of national sovereignty and to curb, even in a small way, the irresponsible power of the liberal media and the left-wing judges appointed by the discredited previous socialist administration is driving the left and their international capitalist friends frantic. Yet in the same week as they were beating up the Hungarians for alleged infractions of democratic norms, the Europhiles held an election for the president of the next 3 years in which there wasn't even a proper debate between the three candidates. To make matters even worse, the socialist candidate, the odious Lenin look-alike Herr Schulz, was in any case a shoo-in as a result of the completely undemocratic stitch-up between the Christian Democrat EPP bloc and the socialist SDs. Under this deal, the presidency for the first half of this parliament went to the EPP nominee Jerzy Buzek, with the SD's comrade Schulz guaranteed the post for the second half. Two MEPs from Britain, the Liberal Democratic Diana Wallis and the Tory Nurj Deva, did stand, providing at least a fig leaf of democracy. Neither ever stood a hope of actually winning, but fair play to them for standing. Schulz was elected with an absolute majority of 387 votes. The only surprise was that M. Deva beat Mrs Wallis by the narrowest possible margin of 142 to 141. It was of course a secret ballot, concludes Nick, but I'm perfectly happy to tell you that my vote made all the difference. Yes, that's right, I voted for Nurj Deva because I believe he would have made a better president than the other two. He has a sense of humour, he certainly enjoyed the irony of me voting for him, and most important of all, could have been relied upon to be scrupulously fair. For us non-attached MEPs, the Parliament's lepers, that would have made a difference. As it is, we are now lumbered with a hardcore socialist who says he will be fair, but several large whitey pinky things with black spots and cute curly tails have just floated past my office window. World news. Israel is to kick out 2,000 immigrants that came to work there from Africa's Ivory Coast. The immigrants who are being deported from Israel are very upset, and some sources have said that the immigrants have said, who of all people would believe that Israel would use deportation? We thought that Israel supports multiculturalism all over the world, so why are they expelling immigrants from their country? One angry protester against the Israel deportation said, Israel should have just as much multicultural per square mile as Britain does. After all, it is the Zionist and Marxist politicians in Britain who planned the great multicultural disaster and ethnic genocide on the British people. Australia has safely saved its country from more illegal immigrant and human rights intimidation by intercepting a second boat with around 80 illegal immigrants on it within the last 7 days. A United States helicopter has crashed in Afghanistan. 6 troops serving there have been killed. Families have been notified, while it is thought that no enemy engagement had been the cause of the incident. Asylum seekers intimidating Switzerland have now had their figures jump up to 45% in the last year. The Marxist human rights law has been sent in by the failing EU to allow them to stay and to allow more ethnic genocide in Switzerland. The Arab League meets this weekend with all the information its monitors have gathered in the trouble-struck Syria. The Arab League has said that its monitors in Syria have done what they set out to do, and it is strongly suggested that they will condemn President Bashar al-Assad. The Arab League will be going along with this because the Syrian president's crackdown on protesters. The United States has sent a military joint chief of staff to Israel. He has been sent to discuss the situation over Iran. Iran is angry over the assassination of its professor of atomic energy, who was brutally killed in a car bomb attack about a week ago. Iran has said that it was Israel behind the attack on the professor, who also worked at teaching students in its university. A coup has failed in Bangladesh recently and was stamped out by its Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who has told Western reporters and the Bangladeshi people that she wants peace and democracy to rule in her country. Thought for the day. I am pleased that so many people listened to my TFTD on Monday and Wednesday. I have received some negative feedback from people who seem to think I do not know much about the Gurkhas and have it in for them. Well, my friends, if you had listened properly, you would have known that my problem is with the massive amount of relatives that seem to take advantage of the system in place now in our country. The Gurkhas are a fine fighting force, a fine mercenary fighting force, and I have no quarrel with them receiving the same pension as one of our British soldiers, even though they still owe their main allegiance to Nepal because they are not British citizens and I believe come under a 200-year-old mercenary charter. Lumley's father was saved in the last war by a Gurkha. Well, that is fine and dandy, but he was doing his job, being a soldier, as many of our fine armed forces are now doing in faraway places with very little consideration when they return home. If the Gurkhas want to be accepted as equals in the British Army, they have to take the cuts the army is taking, or we will have the usual inequality which seems to relate to the colour of one's skin in this country, namely white. I am not a racist, I am a selective tribalist. I admire peoples of different cultures, but I do not admire them when they're in too large a number for comfort in my own country. I would rather go abroad to see different races than just around the corner. Does that make me odd? No, it doesn't. It makes me honest. And finally, It's the Chinese New Year, and this year it is the Year of the Dragon. The main element of the Chinese dragon is water. This won't be a problem for the Chinese water dragon in the future. If it feels thirsty, it can now drink 8.68% of the water that runs through our historic capital city. Now that is what I call selling your country down the river. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very happy and safe weekend.